Welcome back to a Killer Podcast. I'm your host Owen, and today I'm joined by Evan. You may know him as the winner of every single quiz bowl I've ever hosted ever.
That's why I don't do them anymore.
I've been trying to get it so that way I could play against you, and no one wants to host
play me.
But so week 1 of college football is over, and Evan wanted to hop on the show and talk about what happened this weekend because he is an avid college football fan. Did Syracuse win this weekend, Evan?
Yeah, 65-0.
Against who?
Colgate.
Oh, I was gonna say
they're gonna be okay. I mean, they got I don't know. Well, they'll probably go like 6-6. I mean, it's whatever.
All right. Well, you have all the notes written down for how this is. How the weekend went.
I got quite a bit. Yeah.
So
I mean,
you just run me through the games. I only saw a couple of them. So.
Well, I mean, first couple of things too. The AP poll got out yesterday. Bama moves up to 3. OSU drops 2 down to 5. Washington moves up to 8. FSU moves up to 4. Notre Dame's in the top 10, and Colorado and Duke are now ranked, which is kind of interesting. You didn't think you'd see that at the beginning of the year. Did not have that on my bingo card. Yeah, I mean, the blowouts for 2 games for Notre Dame now already. They won 42-3 and 56-3. I mean, not much to say. Sam Hartman looks good, but who really cares? USC 56-28 over San Jose and 66-14 over Nevada. 2 games that, I mean, really don't matter for the grand scheme of their season. The San Jose game's a little concerning. Their defense did not look very good. But, I mean, the offenses looked as good as you could think. UFC looks like they're ready to play in the Big 12. They win 56-6 over Kent State. Michigan kind of struggles, but I don't want to call it struggling. They won 30-3, but they didn't look as good as they should have against ECU. Tennessee with the 49-13 win over Virginia. Joe Milton looks good there, 201 yards, 4 total touchdowns, but once again, not much to take. Oklahoma murders Arkansas State 73-0. Oregon scores 81 points against Portland State. Who really cares? Washington, though, here beats who is favored to win the Mountain West, 56-19. With Michael Penix, 450 and 5 total TDs. I mean, that's a strong case for Heisman off the bat, and really good game for Washington. Texas sort of struggles against Rice and JT Daniels and only wins 37-10. Wisconsin struggles against our local college in Buffalo, 38-17. It was it did not look good going into half. It did not look good. UB would have won that game if they didn't lose that game themselves, probably. Auburn and Hugh Freeze win their first game of the season, 59-14. Interesting coaching hire there. They hired him over Deion Sanders, so I mean that's always going to be
smart. Always smart.
Always going to be an interesting conversation from here on out. Georgia did not look good in the first quarter. It was 7-7 against UT Martin. They win 48-7, and then Alabama wins 56-7 over MTSU. Jalen Milroe, who was not Alabama fans were not happy. They made him the starter. Scores 5 total touchdowns. But it's Middle Tennessee State. Who really cares? And then Oregon State beats San Jose. The second loss for them already. 42-17. TJ Uiagalelei. There was 5 touchdowns. I mean, maybe he wasn't the problem in Clemson.
Well, yeah, you see how their quarterback on a Monday did. So I mean,
I don't know if it was his fault either. I'll get into that once we get to that game. Florida versus Utah, though, the first real game of the season we got to watch. Did not go as well as you would think, but Florida honestly made a push late there. Could have, if you watched the game, it was closer than it seems. But Utah had a ton of injuries. I mean, obviously Cameron Rising not being in, but they also missing a couple other starters. And I mean, they came out looking great. It's huge deep pass down the field, one of their first plays of the game to score. But after that, the offenses were terrible. Graham Mertz really didn't look bad. Florida's new transfer quarterback. I can't think of where he transferred from.
He's Florida's starting quarterback?
Yeah.
I didn't get to see his game. He was from Wisconsin.
Yeah, he's their starter now. He actually didn't look too bad, but he was under pressure all night. I mean, Utah was in the backfield all night. He had 330 yards, 1 TD, and 1 pick. And this is the other reason why I'm not blaming him too much. Florida had a total of 13 total rushing yards the whole game.
Oh, shit.
So he really did not have much help. And, I mean, Utah, even with injuries, looks good, but that is not a good look. That's the first bad loss here we got for the SEC. The second game, the game everyone's talking about, Colorado versus TCU, 45-42. Now, I'm not going to lie. They should have not been 20-point underdogs from the start. I mean, TCU lost everyone. They were only ranked because of what they did last year. I get it, but they're not a bad team, but they are not what they were last year. Shadur Sanders throws 4 touchdowns. 2 of them were the completely wide open receivers. And one was, so I mean, he played good, but I'm not going to overreact like everybody else. Their running back, Edwards, I don't know his first name, but he had 135 receiving yards and 3 receiving touchdowns and a rushing touchdown. He looked great. Colorado had more 100-yard receivers, I'm pretty sure the stat was, in this game than they did all of last season. I think they had 2 100-yard receivers all last year. They had 4 this game. Between Travis Hunter, what's his name? Horn's kid. Who's the dad? I know the kids. I don't know, the NFL receiver, something Horn.
Yeah.
But his son plays at Colorado. He had 100. Obviously, like I said, Travis Hunter had 100. Their running back had 100. And whoever Weaver is, I don't know. I know he's probably some high-end transfer. I just don't know who he is. But he also played well. And you can't forget, Travis Hunter also played 120 snaps and got a huge interception. And he actually saved that whole drive. If you go back and watch that game, it was like a 60-yard play, and he runs down the field after playing all game, makes a tackle at like the 4-yard line, and then proceeds to get an interception in the end zone. So he's honestly looks like probably the best overall player in college football right now. And then, I mean, the only part really to mention on TCU is their defense looked like trash, and Trey Sanders, the Alabama transfer, he had 3 TDs, though. Trey Sanders is going to be a good player. I mean,
Yeah.
he's definitely, that was a good pickup for them. So, I mean, I don't think they'll have a bad season, but they're not going back to the national championship. So,
No.
But this game right here, this is a bad game for the Big Ten. Ohio State only winning 23-3 against Indiana. Indiana, I watched them last year and this year. They have had the worst offense I've ever seen from a Power 5 school. I thought Iowa was bad. Indiana has got to have the worst offense in Power 5. I mean, I think Ohio State only won this game by 20, and I get it, only won by 20, but it's Ohio State. Their defense only allowed 150 yards the whole game, and they only won by 20. Kyle McCord, who they started, I can't think of who the backup is, but I know a lot of people are calling and want to see both quarterbacks. But Kyle McCord goes 20 for 33 for 239 and a pick. Nothing really to talk about there. I mean, definitely not. He has not won that job yet. By week 6, is he still going to be the starter? Nobody knows at this point. Marvin Harrison.
Backup quarterback is Devin Brown. He's a redshirt freshman.
I don't really know much about him, but I've heard about him just in videos I've been watching, reading on Twitter and other stuff. And Marvin Harrison Jr., I don't know, like I said, how much of this is his fault because of the lackluster quarterback play. Well, I guess whole play in general. He only had 2 catches for 18 yards. I mean, that's not concerning, but, I mean, definitely not what people are expecting. Big random game to talk about here. You got Texas State beating Baylor 42-31. Texas State was a 20-point underdog, and I think it was that they've never – or not never, but I don't even remember. It was like a super long time since they had beaten a Power 5 school. So not a good look for the Big 12 here. Penn State plays West Virginia, which was a hyped up game that was not really close at all. And Drew Aller, the new QB for Penn State, 21 for 29, 325, and 3 TDs. I haven't seen a lot of Penn State fans saying that they think they're going to take the next step now that they don't have to rely on Sean Clifford. And I mean, I guess it's fair. He's been there for so long. We don't really know what Ohio State looks like without Sean Clifford yet. So, I mean, something to watch. My favorite game of the week, this is actually the reason I missed the West Virginia-Penn State game, a lot of it, is the UNC-South Carolina game. 31-17.
Big Drake May guy over here.
Big Drake May guy. But bad loss there for the SEC again, because UNC lost a lot of their top playmakers. I mean, Josh Downs, that's really all they had last year, besides the tight ends. Actually, you know what? No, their running back left too. Green. I can't think of his first name, but he left too. So, but really, I mean, not a lot going on there. But I mean, the storyline of this game is UNC had 9 sacks for an SEC line and for a not good ACC. UNC's defense isn't. I mean, I didn't think they were going to be good coming this year. Maybe they're great, but to get 9 sacks, I think that speaks more to South Carolina. But Drake May won 24 for 32 for 269, 2 touchdowns and 2 picks. 2 picks were late, him just trying to play a little bit of hero ball. I mean, it's fine. He's that good. He'll be fine. They play Appalachian State next week. He'll probably throw like 5 touchdowns. So who really cares?
Remember what happened last time when they played Appalachian State?
Well, they should have won that game, but their stupid coach like onside kicked it, and then they returned the onside kick for a touchdown. Like, the game should have been over. I don't remember the exact circumstances, but they were up. And then Appalachian State or North Carolina, someone ran back an onside kick. It was like they scored and then they were able to start coming back. It was stupid. That game shouldn't even have been close. They're going to win by a lot this year. Good news for North Carolina is their running back, British Brooks. I don't know who he is, but I mean, he had 100 yards, looked good. Good replacement for, I think it's Antonio Green that they lost last year. And then only other thing to mention on the UNC side is he had a quiet game for Bryson Nesbitt, who's supposed to be a really high-rated tight end this year. So, I mean, who really cares? We'll see. We got a whole season. Spencer Rattler looked all right. 30
he was getting sacked 9 times.
Yeah, he got sacked 9 times. He didn't throw any interceptions, though. Didn't really make any mistakes. I mean, I guess you could say kept the team in the game, but anyone that watched this game knew North Carolina was winning by half. Xavier Leggett, whoever this is, I like I said, a lot of names in college football I don't recognize, but you're really watching the team. So when you see, especially week 1, you see random players go off. He could be a good player. Memorizing 126 teams players is fucking hard.
South Carolina also lost a lot of their weapons, like the Von.
This guy went 9 for 178 in the receiving game.
Right. So
he looked good. I watched him. I mean, he looked good the whole game.
A lot of guys are going to have to step up because like they lost Jaheim Bell to Florida State. They lost whoever Marshawn Lloyd to USC, and then I think Josh Van was a graduate transfer or something like that.
And that's another thing that makes it so hard to know who's good on whatever team is because everybody entered the transfer portal. So I recognize a lot of names, and the guys ended up there. Like all of week 1, I'm looking at team stats. I'm like, this guy went there. I'm like, what the heck? When did this happen? But next game to talk about, this is a bad game for the Big 12. Randomly, I'm just going to mention it real quick. Is Wyoming upset a really hyped Texas Tech team this year. I mean, Texas Tech wasn't ranked in the first AP Top 25 poll, and their fans were not happy. Like, they thought they should be ranked over a couple of teams, and they lost an OT, granted, to Wyoming. Maybe they're better than they're supposed to be this year, but that's not good. I mean, we'll see what happens with the rest of their season. Maybe the hype was for nothing, or maybe they'll bounce back, but the big 2 final games of the week, the Sunday night game and the Monday night game. We got FSU versus LSU to start, 45-24 FSU. This game was 17-14 going into half, and LSU was winning. I thought for sure, I was sitting around some of my friends, and I said, LSU's got this. They should be up more than 3 right now. They've outplayed them the whole first half. But I don't know if it's the whole LSU offense or just what, but Jaden Daniels didn't do much after. He went 22 for 37 for 346, 1 TD, 1 pick, 64 rushing yards. Not a bad game, but is what it is. But he was completely outplayed by Jordan Travis. 380 total yards, 5 total TDs. Keon Coleman looked amazing. 9 touchdowns, 122, 3 TDs. He absolutely mossed the dude in the end zone. I mean, people were claiming that he should be on the top 10 of Heisman voting this week, but I mean, that's maybe going a little far, but I mean, FSU looks the real deal. I mean, it's their conference to lose at this point. I mean, I think there's some other good teams other than Clemson's not going to be it this year, but I do really think Duke's a lot better. We're going to talk about them here in a second. I obviously think UNC's pretty good. But realistically, there's no reason they shouldn't win this conference. And then the final game of the week. I predicted this before this game. I told everyone. I've taken Duke's points. I'm telling you, Duke is definitely going to cover the spread. But I said I really could see them winning this game. I mean, they returned their really good quarterbacks. I guess you could consider him a star quarterback. He didn't play like it this week, but in Riley Leonard, he's really good player, really good athlete. And then they returned a lot of their weapons too. So I just kind of felt like Clemson has struggled last year. They're going on to a new QB, and I feel like there was kind of some skepticism around their team and their fan base this year. So I just kind of felt it coming into the game, and they just looked horrible, man. I mean, 3 turnovers, 2 blocked kicks, 2 red zone fumbles to begin with. I mean, Duke shouldn't have won this game. I mean, they moved up and down the field on Duke, and that's not against Duke's defense. Duke's defense looked great. They made the plays when they had to. But really, I mean, Clemson could have scored multiple times. It was just costume mistakes. And every time they made a mistake, Duke was right there to capitalize. And that'll cost you. I mean, Duke's offense didn't look good either, honestly. Kate Klubnik went 27 for 43 for 209, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. But that pick wasn't his fault. That went right off Will Shipley's hands into a defender. But, I mean, it's just between him and Dabo, you watch him on the sideline, they just did not look comfortable together. I don't know. Kate Klubnik didn't look comfortable. And I just don't think the team really is responding to Dabo Sweeney anymore. Did I say Debo Samuel?
I don't think so.
Dabo Sweeney. But what's it called? Yeah, I don't know, man. As a coach, I feel like at some point, obviously not this year, not next year, he just seems like he's been left in the past. And obviously you can't fire him because he's won 2 national championships, but this Clemson team could get real stagnant with him as their coach. And Will Shipley had a good game, 140 total yards for 1 touchdown. I mean, I think he'll be a good NFL player this year, whether Clemson does good or not. And then Riley Leonard, the Duke quarterback, real underrated quarterback, 17 for 33, 175 passing, not great, but Clemson defense played good. It's still all 5 and 4-star recruits. I mean, they've had the best recruiting classes in a long time. And he had 100 rushing yards for a touchdown, and his rushing touchdown was a great play. I mean, short yardage, breaks a few tackles, takes it to the house. Looks like Daniel Jones, but doesn't fall over this time. You know, Duke's happy to see that. And, yeah, I mean, he did what he had to do to win. You know, I mean, not much to say there. But Clemson really just shot themselves in the foot this whole game. And, honestly, Clemson's only touchdown was because Duke fumbled a punt within the 20-yard line. And Duke fumbled going into half. So this game easily could have been 31-0. Like, Clemson really should have not scored. So, yeah. But, yeah, that's not good for them, man. It's not a good look. I don't get how they're still ranked in the top 25. I mean, if you're a Clemson fan, you got to hit the panic button at this point. But that's really all for the recaps this week. I mean, he had a lot of blowouts, so as the season goes on, I'm sure we'll be able to get more in depth. Next week's even worse. There's only a few really good games next week. So
I was gonna say I was just looking at next week's schedule. Like
I got 6 games. I got 6 games that we can predict that I think will be good games. Decent games at least. All right, but we could go. I know you had a thing you want to talk about that I also wanted to get into. If you got that all up.
All right. So I have the conference records after week 1. So like the Power 5 conference records, not like
I gotta say, because I know you don't follow like college football, like Twitter and YouTube and all that a lot like me, but they had everybody this offseason with all the moves happening, and it was like SEC's here, Big Ten's here, Big 12's here, and then the Pac-12, the ACC weren't even in the picture. Like, everybody was discrediting them. And I don't know if those teams came out a little fired up. Like, if you're asking me who overall the best conferences are this year, SEC, I'm still putting them at 1. I can't move them. But if we're talking based off just solely performance, SEC did not look great. Big 12 and Big 10 looked horrible. I mean, bad. Not good games for them. So if you want to pull up the records, it'd be...
Yeah, I got them right here. So we have the ACC. They went 10-4 on the week, and then the Big 12 was also 10-4. Big 10 was also 10-4. Let's see.
The Big 10 though, and the Big 12's records were deceiving. I mean, they didn't look good in the games that they won, and they lost some bad games too.
The Pac-12 was 12-0, and the SEC was 11-3. So I mean. Yeah, like you were saying, people were talking. I mean, it's always been like that. That people always talk.
But this offseason, with all the conference realignment, it was the talk. I mean, that was the whole conversation this year. Like all offseason, that if you're a real college, like not a real college football, but like a big time college football fan, I mean, half the conversation in the offseason was Deion Sanders in Georgia, and then the other half was conference realignment. So,
yeah. And speaking of conference realignment, I wanted to bring that up. And that was kind of the point I wanted to make, was that like how everyone keeps talking about how all these teams are moving and stuff, and what that's going to mean for the conferences, especially because like there's 4 teams that are saying like they're going to be staying in the Pac-12. They're going to try to rebuild it by bringing up some Mountain West teams and stuff like that.
Here's the thing with the Pac-12. They're going to be a really competitive conference this year, and they could have been in the future. The only reason these teams are leaving the Pac-12 is because of the deal they made with Apple TV. That is the main reason. It's because of exposure. I mean, yes, I'm sure there's part of it where it's teams want to play the SEC because it looks better in rankings. But the main reason is the television contract that they just signed. I mean, they have the worst deal out of everyone. The Pac-12's mismanagement is the reason this is happening. It's not because teams necessarily all want to leave.
Okay. Now, walk with me here. I'm going to go on a little bit of I'm going to give you my take about this. And it's that specifically that this whole conference shift could be a good thing overall, like for specific teams. So the Pac-12 is losing all their top guys. Like the Big Ten is going to be getting USC, Washington, and Oregon next year. They're getting all these bigger Pac-12 schools, especially the ones that we're talking about being at the top of the class for the Pac-12 this year. Like USC, Oregon, and Washington specifically are the ones that are talked about like maybe winning that conference. Utah is also leaving. The only 4 teams that are staying are Cal, Oregon State, Stanford, and Washington State. And they're talking about bringing up like some Mountain West teams or smaller school or smaller conference teams to just rebuild the Pac-12. But
I'd have to say too, Oregon State I could see leaving.
I could also see that because they're ranked, they're decently respectable when it comes to being a team right now.
Yeah, they could get into another conference, so it could be the Pac-3 very soon.
So the Pac-3 is going to try to Pac-4 right now. The Pac-3 is probably going to try to bring some smaller conference schools up and try to rebuild their conference and build it from there. But if you're a team in like one of the bigger conferences, like say you're in the Big Ten, right, and you're Rutgers or even like a Wisconsin, where like you haven't won you're consistently like okay, like not Rutgers, but like Wisconsin, Indiana, Purdue, Northwestern, Nebraska, these teams that are like good, but they're never going to be top of the conference, right? Why? So all these teams, you're already not going to be top of the conference because you have Ohio State, Michigan, again, even Wisconsin sometimes, Purdue has had a couple of good years in them. So like there's always going to be this top core of guys, and now you're getting the top of the Pac-12 coming in, and now you have to fight, just to get over them to get to the original good teams in the Big Ten. Why wouldn't you, as a bottom feeder or like a mid-tier team, either the Big Ten or even like the SEC, like if Auburn's like, hey, let's go move over to the Pac-12. We'll be the number 1 team immediately. Hold on. So if you're Auburn, right? The only thing, like, you're in Alabama, which is one of the biggest pipeline states for college football talent, because like there's all high school football is huge in Alabama. Kids are always coming out of there and they're great. They're always some of the top recruits come out of like the South specifically. Auburn's only selling point to recruits right now, to fresh recruits, is you live close to us. We're in Alabama. You want to stay close to home. And
I don't think that's true. They got Hugh Freeze now. I think that's honestly a big aspect you're forgetting. That hire signals to me that they're trying to compete in the SEC. They don't want them to leave the SEC. That's a big name hire. They're trying to compete. So maybe
not Auburn, but like I'm just saying Auburn.
I get what you're saying. I get where you're coming from though, and I mean I'll tell you this: it's not going to happen right away. And the main reason is these schools don't want to pay the buyout. The Big Ten's contract with their TV. The bigger schools, they don't care. I mean, they have money to spend, and they can make that payout happen. But a school like Purdue, I mean, maybe they don't want to maybe spend what I don't know exactly what the contract is, but I guarantee you it's millions and millions of dollars. They might wait till their contract's out and then see how things work out and probably go. I mean, that's very realistic, I think, idea in the future. But also, too, I think a lot of certain teams won't leave because if they're more of a basketball school and the Big 12 or the Big 10 is more in line for them still to compete in basketball, they might not be so quick to make that move. But at the end of the day, football makes the most money, so that could happen. But
yeah, and if you're like, so we've always talked about how like the bottom feeders of the SEC could compete in these other conferences, especially now if the Pac-12 is losing all their best players. If you're one of the worse off teams in the SEC and you're like, hey, if we move to the Pac-12, we could probably be a consistent conference champion. Like we could go over there, and especially if they're bringing up the people from like the Mountain West and stuff like that, you could basically tell recruits like, hey, if we're in the South, right? So there's already a good crop of local talent you can sell being close by. You can now also sell that, hey, you'll be fighting for a Pac-12 championship. We're already going to be top. Like Auburn is never going to, like, again, I'm going to keep going to Auburn. Auburn's never going to win the SEC South or whatever the hell they're in because you got Alabama, you got Georgia.
I don't think that's true. I mean, they've done it in not the very long past. Like, I mean, they've won a national championship within the recent history.
Yes, but they're not going to be like, that's not a, you can't be like, hey, we're going to win the SEC this year. We're the front runners for the SEC this year.
You got to remember, apparently the SEC is also trying to bring over Clemson and FSU, but they're in issues with contract negotiations. What I think is going to end up happening in the long-term future is you're going to see the Big Ten and the SEC be the two power conferences. And within the next few years, when TV contracts maybe start to run out, the Big Ten honestly might tell some teams to get the heck out. We need better teams. And you're going to see the Big 12 and the ACC's top half dissolve into these two bigger conferences with the Big Ten and the SEC kicking out, teams like Vanderbilt, Indiana. I mean, these schools are going to go. and they're going to be replaced by the top of the ACC and the top of the Big 12. And then you'll see the bottom half of the Big 12, bottom half of the ACC, what's left of the Pac-12, other group of 5 teams that are looking good, like Tulane, and want to get into a bigger conference necessarily. Probably make two more conferences that are, quite not, I wouldn't say you won't have your Power 4 conferences, but you'll have your Power 2 conferences, and then you'll have a clear 2 below. And then you'll have, your group of 5s and however that works out. And I expect them to probably keep bringing teams up to D1, So there's going to be more room for conferences. I mean, the game's only growing, college football, especially with Deion Sanders now. This is the most talk about college football in general, just the sport, in the last few years. I mean, he's really brought a lot of, everybody who the heck would have been watching Colorado game a couple weeks ago? People are talking about college football more now than they have in a long time.
I just think that everyone was trying to paint this whole conference dissolving and all this moving as a bad thing, but you can use this if you're kind of a middle of the pack team in these bigger, better conferences. You can move over to these worse conferences when your deal's up, and then you can then become a perennial college football playoff member because now the new format's coming in. If you win the conference, you get into the playoffs. So if you're a team that's at the bottom half of the SEC, but that you're probably still better than what's already in the Pac-12, you can sell to your recruits hey, even though we're going to move into the Pac-12, which means we think we have a better team than the majority of the people in that conference. We think we're going to be contending for the top or for the conference championship every year. And then that also punches us a ticket guaranteed into the college football playoffs, which then gives us a chance to go to the Natty. You'll get a chance if you come to us because we're going to the Pac-12.
I also think, though, that rule is, and with the way the conferences are going, is going to have to be changed very quickly. We might even see a change before next year. I honestly think that. Just because they'll keep the teams the same, but with the way conferences are, I mean, you can't justify right now if the Pac-12 goes and adds a bunch of Mountain West conferences teams, them getting an automatic bid. I mean, you can't really justify it. Even the ACC. Does the ACC? I guess this year they look better, but does the ACC truly deserve an automatic bid? I mean, maybe not in the past few years. Maybe if Florida State's good, but if Florida State's as good as they say, they'll get a bid anyway without the ACC. So I don't know about all that. And also, you got to realize these teams at the top aren't going to just leave their conference to go win other conferences, because the people that make these decisions aren't thinking about the program winning. They're thinking, if I stay in the SEC, we're going to make more money most likely. If I stay in the Big Ten, more TV ratings, better TV deals, more eyes on your program, probably going to make more money still. So they're not going to make that decision with the idea of winning. But if the college football format stays the same, you have a right idea there, because if you can get it winning your conference, who cares if you make the SEC? If you're making the college football playoffs, that's going to be better for your school, get more eyes on your school also. So, I mean, we still have to see how everything plays out. I think it's almost too early to talk about that. I think teams will get kicked out of their conferences or kind of be pushed out their conferences before you see lower level teams leaving necessarily.
Yeah, but I think, like I said, I think it'd be more of that mid-tier to low-level guys. Instead, it wouldn't be the top of them. Bama's not going to lead the SEC because there's all of a sudden more competition in it now. They're going to try to win the conference because it does give you more money. But if you Rutgers isn't in Northwestern, don't get a lot of money from the Big Ten.
They should. Yeah, you're right. But they should leave. They shouldn't be in that conference to begin with. That's long overdue for them to realign. But teams like Auburn, maybe Auburn is not looked good the last few years, but I mean, the mismanagement at coaching, and if people truly do believe in Hugh Freeze and look at what he did at Ole Miss, I mean, obviously there was the whole scandal thing and all that, but I mean, it doesn't change the fact that he was a good coach at Ole Miss. If he could easily, with SEC too, you can get good recruits just for the fact that kids want to play in the SEC. I mean, you hear recruits coming out and saying it, and with the transfer portal now, I mean, anything's free game. Any team, look at Texas State. I mean, bottom 5, or what's it called? It's a mid-major school, and they got 45 transfers this year, and they come out and they beat a Power 5 team. It's weird. You don't know.
Yeah.
The transfer portal's changing everything. I think with Auburn, they do the portal right, and you're in the SEC. You're going to get transfers. You're going to get good recruits. They can easily compete with Bama or Georgia. And like I said, I mean, Georgia's great now. Is every year Georgia going to be number one? Probably not. I mean, they're always going to be up there, but you're going to see a rise and fall at some point. Nick Saban's got to retire at some point too.
Yeah, I mean, you can also take it with I was just trying to think of teams that were in because Auburn's in Alabama, but you could do Miami in the ACC in Florida, or SMU in the AAC in Texas. You got these teams that are are not great or kind of okay in their home conferences right now, but are in these pipeline states that if you can sell the recruits like, hey, don't go to Texas A&M, come to SMU because we're going to be competing for a conference championship and be in the national champion or in the national football playoffs every year or college football playoffs every year, then that might be a chip you can play on them.
You're right, but I still think majority of 4-star and 5-star kids, especially if there's 2 power conferences, are going to go to the Big Ten or the SEC. But where those schools are going to be good is with the way the transfer portal now works. A lot of those kids get there and realize, holy crap, there's 4 or 5 stars in front of me as well. And I'm a 4-star. I'm not going to get on the field till my junior or senior year or at all. And they're going to hit the portal. And it really is going to come down to how these other teams that aren't in the Big Ten and the SEC do in the portal. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's even the teams from the SEC too, but the teams not in those 2 conferences, really how they go in the portal and recruit and add guys there is going to be a big deal. I mean, that's going to be a lot. Transfer portal is going to be potentially, I think, a bigger conversation than recruiting in the next few years.
Yeah. All right. I think we should do our quick rapid fire predictions for those games you picked, and then let's get the hell out of here for this episode.
Yeah, we can go a little bit in. We're not going to talk too much. Notre Dame at NC State. NC State's quarterback, he's the transfer from junior, Brendan Thompson, not good. So I have imagined.
You're also not crazy on Sam Hartman either. So I mean,
I wouldn't say I'm not crazy on him. I just think there's a lot of hype, and we haven't seen him really play anyone yet. I mean, he was good at Wake Forest, but I mean, he's looked great. I can't knock him, but he's also played no one, so he's doing what I expect.
Notre Dame's no doubt here, right? Notre Dame's
gonna win this game. Yeah, I mean, before I forgot what Brendan Thompson looked like because I haven't watched a Virginia game in a while. Yeah, I watched him play last week, and yeah, they're definitely gonna win. Now this one. Yeah. Next game, interesting. Nebraska at Colorado. Colorado's only a -3 point favorite, and they were they were +7 last week.
The cheapest ticket for this game is $283.
Oh, Colorado's going to win by a lot. Nebraska's offense looked terrible last week. Jeff Sims is not a quarterback; he's a running back. There's a reason he played at Georgia Tech. He looked bad against Minnesota, even though they should have won that game. Colorado's going to win by probably 20. I mean, this Nebraska is fucking. I feel bad for Matt Rule. I really hope he can turn that program around.
So what you're saying is take Colorado with the points.
Oh, dude. If you could adjust that spread, -8, -10 Colorado, whatever it is, take it. I mean, -3 is just basically a gift. Next game, I got number 20 Ole Miss going to number 24 Tulane. This is a really good game to see if Tulane is still what they were last year and is Ole Miss better this year?
Start the quarterback for Ole Miss?
Still? I don't think so, but I could be wrong. I did not watch their absolute blog game last week. You looking it up or am I?
Yeah, I got it right here.
All right.
He is still the quarterback for Ole Miss.
Okay. I mean, I don't know. I haven't really watched. I didn't watch either team's week 1 game. I mean, there were so many other games to watch, but this game is definitely one I'm going to tune into this week.
And, he went 18 for 23 for 334 and 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, but they won by 70 points. Who cares? Like, I mean, you should do that. I mean, if you didn't do that, I would. Who did they even play?
It was
Mercer.
Yeah, Mercer.
Yeah, but I'm gonna go with Ole Miss winning. I just think, I don't see Tulane pulling this off. I think they're still a good team. Like, I think they got a good culture, but I don't think they're a top 25 team this year.
Yeah, I think they lost a lot of talent to the draft last year.
It's just hard as a power or as a group of 5 school to be a top 25 team 2 years in a row. It's just a lot of guys, especially nowadays, are going to transfer the minute they have a good year at a group of 5 school. It's tough. Next game I got is number 23 A&M, who I'm not very high on, at Miami. Miami, it's another team. You don't know what you're going to get. A&M, you thought they were going to be good last year. They weren't. I don't know. It's a tough game. They beat A&M. Beat a cupcake.
Oh, Miami beat Miami of Ohio.
Miami of Ohio. Yeah, the Battle of Miami. Sort of. One's in Ohio.
I think I would take A&M in that game.
I think you got to, based off the ranking, but I also thought A&M was going to be good last year when they brought in all those recruits, and they were not good. So
I'll never forget. Really... I called the upset. I think it was App State over Texas A&M. I called that.
Yeah,
I mean, won some good money on it.
Who would have? It's just like you want to pick A&M. That seems like the easy pick, but I don't know. I wouldn't be so fast. It's definitely a game to watch. The best game of the week here. We got number 11 Texas at number 3 Bama. Our old neighbors go into this game.
Jesus.
Yeah, that's interesting. But I think Bama's -8, and I'm taking that -8 for Bama. I mean, they're probably going to win by, I don't know.
I mean,
10.
it was what was it? It was only like a 6-point game last year, and that was with Hudson Card coming in, and they had Bryce Young.
Yeah, I know, but
and I mean they had Bijan Robinson.
Texas did not look as good against Rice of all teams. Now I know Rice has a few good players. Like they have Sean Taylor's little brother at safety. He's a good defensive player. JT Daniels didn't play good, but I mean I guess he's supposed to be good.
He's a name.
Yeah, he's a name. But I mean Quinn Ewers wasn't too impressive. I don't know. I mean I think they could keep it closer, but I think Bama's got a lot to prove and got a chip on their shoulder finally after making playoffs every year.
What makes me mad is that
they're counting them out. A lot of people are already a lot of people going into the year weren't kind of counting Bama out. So I think at least to start off the year, Bama, especially against their first top 25 team, Saban's going to have them ready to go. And I think they're going to win by 10, maybe 12. I think it'll be a game, but I think by the fourth quarter, Bama's just going to pull away. I think.
Give me a point spread.
Too much.
Give me a point spread.
The point spread is 8, I think.
You give me your point spread.
10.
I'll take Texas plus 10.
I'm not going to bet on that. I just think
I'd take Texas plus 8.
I would. I think 8's about right, but I think it'll be a between 10 to 12 point game, and I think, like I said, Bama just at the end of the game is going to pull away.
I might put some money on the Texas money line, to be honest with you.
I don't think so. I think you're making it. It's at Bama, first off.
That's fair. It's fair.
Texas is going into Bama. I mean, Bama wants to beat them. They're going to be an SEC team next year. They think they can hang with the SEC. I think Saban's going to have them ready to go. I mean, this is their first top 25 game. Like I said, Bama not being written off because they're Bama, but people weren't as confident going into this year. I think Bama's going to come out and look pretty convincing. And then my last game, I want to just throw it out there. Number 13, Oregon at Texas Tech.
I'm kind of mad it's on at the same time as Texas versus Alabama.
It's not a game. I might have it on my other screen. I'm not going to technically watch it, but I think there's some interest here. Texas Tech, like I said, had hype coming out. They barely lost the game to Wyoming. I think Oregon just won 81-7. Seen Texas Tech lose. Maybe you're coming in with a little bit of cockiness, while Texas Tech, they're playing at home. They don't want to. They know if they win this game, they can loop their fans right back in for the season. I mean, if you beat number 13 Oregon, that Wyoming loss, yeah, it's there, but it becomes forgettable real quick. And it's at Texas Tech. I mean, Oregon's got to go to them. So yeah, I wouldn't pick them. For that one. I wouldn't pick them. I'm picking Oregon. But Texas Tech, like I said last week, I picked Duke. I wasn't picking them to win the game necessarily. I sort of was. I kind of was saying I think Duke will win. But, you know, it's hard to go against the top 15 team and say they're not going to win. But I think Texas Tech maybe could sneak this one out. Would I bet on them to win money line? No.
Yeah. Here's a more interesting bet on here. The over-under is set at 66.5.
I am not a fan of over-unders right now in college football. Just because of the new clock rules. I think they don't really know where to set over-unders at yet. I think they're kind of just winging it right now. So I've kind of been
I'm just saying Texas Tech's always known as like a high-flying offense, and Oregon just put up 81 points.
Yeah, I mean, the over's definitely more enticing than the under, but I don't know if I'd touch it. I think your best bets this week are Bama -8 and Colorado -3, if you ask me.
I'm going to ignore exactly what you just said, and I'm going to take Texas +8.
I mean, that's fine, but I know who I'm taking. But, I mean, like I said, it's going to be more of a boring week in college football compared to last week. But, I mean, there's college football, and there's always something to watch.
Yeah. I bet you there'll be some kind of upset that everyone tunes into, and now that's what they're going to be talking about for the rest of the week.
I don't know. I don't know if I see that this week. But the one I could see is maybe Tulane over Ole Miss. Mm-hmm. Maybe a team just doesn't look as good against a bad team, I think will be the conversation. If Ohio State comes out, I think they're playing a cupcake, and looks flat again and wins like 30-7 or something, or 35-7 against a cupcake. I think that starts the conversation of, is Ohio State a top 10 team this year? But we'll see. You know, I mean, there's not much here.
Well, we'll be back next week to talk about everything that does happen, see if it's a little more interesting than we're setting up to be. I will have a parlay set, and I'll tell you how well that goes over.
Yeah, we'll
next
talk
week,
about
right?
that next week. I'll find a parlay.
All right, sounds good. That's it. Check out everything else we're going to be doing. Again, we'll be back here next week. NFL football starting up.
Probably a little
this
bit
week, so
shorter next week. Not as much
hopefully.
to talk about.
This was a lot of establishing stuff.
It's
so.
week 1. You got it. There's a lot to talk about. Once the weeks
Yeah.
start to go, it becomes a little easier.
I'll definitely probably chop up some of this stuff and post it as some shorter teaser stuff. So
Yeah.
look forward to that. And yeah, I think I'm all set.
Yeah, that's good for me. I'll see you guys next week.
See you next week.